Been sleeping for too long. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up! Wake up! I see the sunshine gazing through the window pane. Blazing like endo flame. It's time to wake up. Come to your senses, man. Snow is all around you, but you don't play in the winter game. Cartridges surround you, but you ain't playing Nintendo games. Load them up.
Greetings and welcome back to the Woke Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Jones, and on today's episode of the Woke Podcast, we're going to check out a show that I was featured on earlier this week by Dr. Vibe. I was on the Dr. Vibe show. He has a portion of his show that he calls Do You Know What Time It Is, where he gets a lot of brothers around a circle, pretty much a panel, and what we do is we talk about various different articles and topics that are going on throughout the week. And I was fortunate enough to be accepted onto this platform, and it's kind of a big thing to not only get some exposure to myself, but also to let folks know that, hey, we're over here at the Woke Podcast. So already being on this show has increased subscribers to the podcast, so I'm very much appreciative of this. But for my folks who are not familiar with Dr. Vibe, I'm going to rebroadcast that episode right here on the Woke Podcast, so you're gonna check that out. I know what's going on. I understand that President Barack Obama is leaving office. Trump is being ushered in. The inauguration is happening. Everybody is up in arms. People are saying he's not my president. Whoa, what? We can't let Barack Obama go. I should have threw a Barack is going away party, a farewell. Everybody relax, calm down. Things are going to change. Things are going to be different, but that doesn't mean things are going to stop. We have to keep moving forward. We have to keep understanding that it's on us to make the changes that we need. We had 8 years of Barack Obama. Some of us did better than others. Collectively, we are in the same spot that we were in before, so we got to keep pushing forward as people. Do not lose yourself. Do not lose yourself. I think I'm going to do a special broadcast. I got an episode already lined up for next week, but in the meantime, I think I'm gonna slide in the inaugural broadcast. I'm gonna listen to what Trump has to say, give my commentary on it, and see what happens, man, because things are going to be different. I'm not going to be the person that's going to sit here and say that we're going to go back to slavery, or black people need to just go ahead and leave the country. If that's what you want to do, if that's what we should do, and you feel that's the best plan for you, go ahead. But at the same time, slow down. Let's slow our roll. That might not necessarily be needed for us, but we do need to tighten up on regardless on who was going to get in office after Barack Obama left. We needed to tighten up, and hopefully this is where we're at, that we are getting politically smarter. We're getting politically organized. We're getting financially smarter. We're getting financially organized. And we are also getting educationally smarter, and we're getting educationally organized. And that's with the school systems in our local area, and for our own personal education, our own knowledge. These are things that we can't control ourselves. We cannot keep externalizing our power onto governmental agencies. We need to take the power into our own hands. That takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of risk to take that a lot of us are not familiar with, that a lot of us are not comfortable with, but that's what we have to do. We have to do that. It's on us, man. It's on us. We cannot keep waiting for everybody else, because guess what? This world is moving. No matter how much we march, no matter how much we boycott, no matter how much we, hashtag, the world is still moving around us, and we have to move ourselves forward as black folks, as global citizens, as global people who are trying to put themselves in a position of power so people can stop manipulating us their advantage. It's time for us to just really do our own thing, and hopefully this is a wake-up call. I've been seeing it all. You've been seeing it. I've been seeing it. People been calling coons, Steve Harvey, everybody. I mean, Lamont Hill. Everybody's getting the coon treatment, and I talked about this a couple podcasts ago, the Coon Hunter podcast. Go back and check that out. I talked about this is going to continue. And you know what, when I talk about, I'm gonna have a special podcast, so just stay tuned. Stay tuned. I'm gonna have a special podcast on black leadership, coons, and DJ Trump, as I like to call him, President Donald J. Trump. because this is going to continue, and we have to prepare ourselves and understand that no matter how frustrated we get amongst ourselves, everybody else is moving forward. So while we're squabbling, everybody else is squadding up, and it's time for us to squad up. So that's enough of that. That's going to come in the next podcast. For now, you're going to check me out on Dr. Vibe Show. Do you know what time it is? I was featured on this panel with 4 other brothers, very smart men. Mr. Rodney Kellum, who's also going to be a guest on the Woke Podcast coming up soon. Alfonso Porter, who's another awesome man that I've recently connected with. And then Dr. Thomas L. Ryer. Dr. Thomas L. Ryer, this dude was spitting fire on the show. So check me out. Check out the Woke Podcast. As always, like it, subscribe to it, share it with somebody you care about. Here we go.
Welcome to the show that gives you news commentary from a black male perspective. Do you know what time it is?
What is up, everybody? It is Dr. Vibe, host and producer of Do You Know What Time It Is? I'm also host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. I'm also a certified empowerment coach and president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. If you do not know what Do You Know What Time It is all about, sit and listen, but I'll give you the little capsulized version right now. Most Sunday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern time, I get a group of black men together, share news stories or current events with them, and they provide their thought process and feedback. So there it is. Excited as always. We have 2 brand new panelists for the Dr. Vibe show tonight. One of them has already been on my show, and another one said, I want to get on this show. And I like that. He reached out and I took action. So first new panelist tonight is Brandon Jones, host of the Woke Podcast, but he's going to share a little bit about himself right now. So Brandon, welcome to the conversation table and share a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. So I'm Brandon Jones. I'm originally from St. Paul, Minnesota, which is a part of the Twin Cities with Minneapolis, home of Prince. I'm sure most people know Prince. I know Dr. Vibe loves Prince. So that's where I reside and where I'm from. I'm a psychotherapist by profession. I'm a husband and a father of 2 lovely young ladies. And I am the producer and creator of Woke Podcast. And on Woke Podcast, what we do, we focus on constructive information on self-development, mental health, and success, targeted towards African-American people, but all folks are welcome to listen to Woke Podcast. So that's who I am. I help people heal from the past, grow in the present, and build legacy for the future.
Wonderful. And thank you so much for taking the time from your positive, productive schedule, because as you can hear, everybody, he's got a lot going on. So he's with us tonight. Exactly. So he got a lot go on, as we say. So thanks so much for taking the time. Next up, a new person for Do You Know What Time Is, but he has been on the Dr. Vibe show, and definitely go to my website, thedrvibeshow.com, and check out the phenomenal conversation I had with this gentleman. It was so impactful. He's going to be back on at least 2 more times because he has at least 2 or 3 other areas that he can provide positive thought process. But tonight he's joining the Dr. Vibe show in the capacity of panelists on Do You Know What Time It Is? We have from New York, Dr. Thomas L. Ryer. Welcome, Doctor.
Welcome. How are you? How are the men doing today?
Blessed and highly favored, man.
Amen. Amen.
And can you share a little about yourself, sir?
My name is Dr. Ryan from New York. I'm a father of 4. What I do is I work with formerly incarcerated men and women returning home from long incarceration. I work with the youth in the community as a mentor. I have a mentor program. And I work with fathers. I teach fathers how to be dads. And so I have a program that work with dads and work with fathers and work with young people in the community and try to get them on the right track.
Excellent. And I just want you to answer this question for our audience, either live or replay. How many times were you incarcerated? Have you been incarcerated in your life?
Incarcerated 3 times. Actually, when somebody says incarcerated, they can say they were in prison or detention. And I was in prison 3 times.
For a total of how many years approximately?
22.
There you go, folks. And look what he has done with his overcoming. Leave it there. Listen
Yeah,
to
my
yeah.
mind.
Listen.
My mind,
Yeah,
brother.
listen
Well,
to
you know
his.
something?
Go ahead.
All I can say is God is good. There's nothing I've done. He just seen something in me. There's nothing I've done. It's all that he did. He gave me an opportunity, and I took advantage of it.
Wonderful. All right. Next up, a gentleman we have not seen for a while. Interesting enough, I think it's been a while since Denver Broncos played, so I didn't think we'd probably no. Okay. All right. He's
Oh, so it's like
he's back with us. Always a pleasure and honor to have him on the round table. We have Dr. Alfonso Porter from Denver, Colorado.
okay. So it's like that, Dr. Bob. Well, gentlemen, it's a nice being with you. Good night. No, just kidding. Hey, listen, I'm Alfonso from Denver, and I'm the managing partner of a company called Vertex Learning, where we specialize in helping you get your book out of your head and into the marketplace in a real way. And we're also very proud of our new subsidiary, 1 Mile High Speakers, where we provide pitch perfect speakers and presenters for your events. And listen, I'm a regular contributor to Dr. Vibe. I'm thrilled to have you two new gentlemen on tonight, and look forward to getting to know you better. But the first guy, is that Brian?
Brandon.
Brandon. I'm sorry, Brandon. He sounds a lot like Dr. Rashid.
He does. Absolutely.
I do. I'm a listener to the show, so I'm familiar with Dr. Rashid. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So welcome, fellas. It's a pleasure to meet you virtually.
Same here.
Excellent.
Thank
Next up and in the bullpen, the fatherpreneur from Atlanta, Georgia. Go for it, my man. You're Rodney, you sounding very quiet. Pull up your volume.
Is that better?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay. So this is Rodney Kellum, fatherpreneur. I'd like to begin by saying thank you to Dr. Vibe for providing an outlet for Black men to talk about things that matter to us and those that love us. And I'm very excited to be, back rolling with Dr. Vibe for this new year. So let's get at it.
Wonderful. All right. So let's get to it, gentlemen. First conversation piece. Here's a story. How the sound of your voice affects your career. So the first commentary on the conversation piece is going to Brandon.
All right. I found this article to be pretty interesting. It really highlighted how Blackness is often seen as a negative thing, and how the sound of our voice, yes, the sound of our voice does play a critical role in, where we go and what circles that we operate in. But I don't think that it should be something that hinders you from, economic success. Now I'm a black male. I'm a bigger black male. I'm 6 foot tall. And my voice isn't that deep. So I don't have the deepest voice, but that hasn't been the thing that has hindered me in my professional development at all. However, I have noticed being a male, I do get different levels of respect versus a female counterpart or colleague that I may have get. So I thought it was an interesting article. One of the things that I really think was an undertone for the article is how Black people are being assimilated more into American culture, and how Blackness is seen as something to be looked at as a negative thing that we need to get rid of in order for us to fit in, quote unquote, which really begs and goes back to the question of Dr. W.E.D. Du Bois and the color line. We're still dealing with the same issues that he talked about over 100 years ago, and this whole notion of code switching and not being so Black to fit in and to be approachable and to be able to connect with your peers and not feel as a threat. So, voice inflection, deep tones, all that stuff does equal, to a certain level of authority. However, I don't think that should be something that should stop us or hinder us. So I thought the article overall was pretty interesting, and it could have went a little deeper.
Good first start, sir. Next up, Dr. Ryer.
Dr. Ryan. I thought the article was interesting, but I don't think that a voice defined you or an individual, because there's so many things to a person. I thought that the article took some culture away, that that as African American, that it seemed that we had to fit in to a subculture. But I'm here to say that we have a culture of our own, and whether you have a deep voice or or tenor, whatever the case may be, it's your actions, I believe, that perpetuate who you are and who you will become. I don't think it's the sound of your voice. I can recall some years ago, I was in a place and there was a lot of people and they were making noise, and the person turned around and said, "You talking too loud." And we're in a social place, and they said we were talking too loud. And so I think it's just stereotypical for people to want others to adjust to their space, and that's how basically I saw the article. I think that it took away, like Brandon said, it took away from the cultural tone, and it could have went deeper.
Okay. Next up, Dr. Porter.
Well, thanks, Dr. Vibe. And, that's a great start, fellas. I think it started out, when I read the article, it started out with the woman saying that, oftentimes she's confused for a white person, and that was a regular occurrence in her life. And so it seemed to kind of take on the imprimatur of a more feminine kind of a piece, where you're having a black woman express about the fact that when you categorize them and you rank them, you have the white man and the black man and the white woman, then the black woman who's ultimately last, and how that goes to impact a career. But certainly as a black man, I have never in my adult professional life felt as though my voice was an impediment in any way. Of course I'm black. I can't help but to sound black. And so however educated I may be, I'm always going to be authentically, legitimately a black man. And so I think what is happening, and I think Brandon alluded to this a bit, listen, hey, we're in a new era. We've just had a highly successful African-American president, a beautiful first lady who's exhibited nothing but class and grace and integrity. And so I think the world views the African-American in a brand new light, having gone this 8 years. And lastly, I'll say the reality must be for us as black men whose hopes and dreams and prayers have been nothing but to lift our people up. I have to say that when you think about the fact that college freshmen don't know another president other than Barack Obama. When you think about the impact, not only on that particular group who are now 18, 19 years old, but anything that comes behind this will have a completely different outlook than what we've had to deal with. We grew up in the civil rights movement or the Black Power movement or having survived Reagan or whatever it is we've had to come to as black men. So, but I think that our voices, somewhat strangely, will now become an asset.
And final commentary on this one goes to Rodney. You're very low again.
These headphones don't work today. Okay.
So
this piece really brought me to a few different points, and a few different things that I've just noticed throughout my lifetime. One thing is the first voice that a male child or even a girl child, but specifically males, learn to love and then love to hate, not even hate, but just tune out, is their mother's voice. And so when you grow up and you start working with adult women, it's almost like just in the back of your subconscious mind, a woman represents your mother's voice in the place of authority when she's an authority. So certain things, I don't know, getting past the racist issues, the prejudice issues, are really going to help women in that regard. We can work past the color issues of, the white woman coming first and the black woman coming after that. That's weird. That they should be the same, but we all know the issues with that. But when it comes to men responding to women in the arenas of authority, even as much as you can respect, there's sometimes a subconscious thing that we have to deal with and get over with really fast, is that when maybe a female in authority raises her voice or is frustrated or is demanding things, we just automatically subconsciously tune that voice out, because it can, based on your experience, could be annoying or could be comforting. So that's one little quirk that I don't think most people really account for. Secondly, this also makes you think of the whole, you sound white phenomenon or problem or thing that they like to say. I've developed a different thought process on this, and it really flies in the face of you sound white, right? So if you speak English, if you speak German, if you speak French, if you speak Spanish, if you speak Dutch, you officially sound white. You know why? Because those languages are used by predominantly white people. So when we talk about you sound white, you sound black in the American terms, I worked with one white guy in my lifetime that has that stereotypical white guy voice. Hey there, Bob. His name was Bob, and he really sounded like that. But most other people, depending on where you go in the country, don't typically sound the white guy voice. Now, 9 times out of 10, most black people and white people listening blindly can tell if it's a black person or white person. That just goes back to DNA, goes back to experience, goes back to traits passed down. But when they say that, if you're a black person that so quote unquote speaks well, you pronounce well, you articulate so well, you all of a sudden talk white. And it's really degrading to say the people that were first on this earth can't master a language. There's so many things behind that statement. You're saying, you black man, I am so surprised that you've mastered the English language well enough for me to understand you clearly. It's like one of those things that they may not know are offensive, and you got to maybe just call them out sometimes. Oh, you're so articulate. Well, what did you expect? It's time for us to maybe have those conversations, force those conversations, and to show people their ignorance. So those are my main points on that topic.
Okay, gentlemen, good start. Next conversation piece. Kim Burrell and the complex relationship between black women and gay men. And for those who don't know enough about this story or anything about this story, Kim Burrell is a fairly prominent singer in the gospel music world. And she was one of the contributors to the Hidden Figures soundtrack, the recent movie that came out. And she made some comments about gays. And then all of a sudden, she got pulled from appearing on the Ellen DeGeneres show. And also Pharrell, who's one of the producer of the Hidden Figures soundtrack, did not have too many good words for her. So we're just going to leave it at that, but let the gentleman open up on this. So first comment goes to Dr. Ryer.
Yeah. I couldn't read the complete thing because my little son was acting up during that time. But what I do know in regards to her in terms of her being a Christian is that that's what the Bible says. But there's a movement in this country that is very strong for LGBT, and that it appears that certain industries that you're in, you have to be very careful how you pen that. Now, my thing is that if you want to talk about that, then you're going to have to be self-sufficient, because a lot of times they're in a lot of different things. And so you need to be mindful of what you say and how you say certain things in certain industries, especially when you're not pulling certain, you're not making decisions on your own.
All right. Next up, Dr. Porter.
Okay. Well, hey, listen, I think that, it seems to be this dynamic within the Black church. And I think that the article alluded to it, this condemnation atmosphere. It appears as though everything is an abomination, right? And so Kim Burrell, how do I frame this? She's more than likely encountering a lot of gay men, in as much as she's a singer, and in most cases you're going to have a prevalence of gay men in choirs who are singing and who are musicians and these kinds of things. Now, it may lend itself also to the fact that she's a heavyset woman, right? And as men, we're visual. So I might suggest for Kim, to focus more on getting herself in better shape and not necessarily blaming others for their choices or their whoever they are. Stop the condemnation. Stop the hate. If you want to attract a black man, then look like you want to attract a black man. Put the pig feet down. Put the greens down. Get to the gym and look like it. So, I'm not sure whether that's harsh, and I certainly don't mean to be disrespectful in any way, but I mean, she's in a profession where she's surrounded by gay men all the time. And if she's trying to find a man, that ain't the profession she needs to be in.
Next up, Rodney Kellum.
So as a minister, I've really made sure I don't say the wrong things in an attack of a Christian sister. However, I have several pastor friends and people in ministry, and one in particular had a great response, is that he's ministered for many, many decades. And he's been in the past somebody who may have said the same things that Kim has said in the past. But as he's gone through life and he's matured, he made the statement, quoting scripture, that the letter of the law killeth, meaning like if you go by the Old Testament, when you sin, when you were caught in the act of sinning, death was your punishment. But he said, going by the Spirit leads to life. And so, you can argue, English translations, old translations about homosexuality. That debate may or may not ever end. I'm really not going to critique her. I truly haven't in depth listened to what she said. But what I do know is what the first brother was talking about, is that the LGBTQ community is so politically strong that I would say that they're coming close to the political power of the Jewish community. Now, if you say anything out of pocket about the Jewish community and you have an economics at stake, you're going to lose a lot of economic support. The LGBTQ community has done the same thing. You say anything sideways about them, they're going to pull your financial support. I would say that it's time for black folks to do the same thing, but we can talk about that at a different time. When they talk about this partnership between straight black women and gay men, I don't think they're telling the story in this article in the Griot. Because if you ever spend any time with black women and get to their true honest place, meaning that they've opened up to you, yeah, they can go to the gay club and have fun and feel safe, that, men ain't going to hit on them and all that stuff. That's all fine and dandy. When it comes to looking for a partner, looking for marriage, looking for somebody to start a family with, a companion, they're very frustrated about how many gay men there are. I happen to live in the Atlanta area where there's a very large gay population. And women flock here when they see an amount of single men, but then they become disappointed when they go out and about trying to get hooked up with men, and so many of them are gay. And they are actually very frustrated when it comes time to actual relationships, where they may see someone that they feel is extremely attractive. He has a great profession. He's secure in his life. He treats his mother great. And then come to find out he rather just, share makeup tips with you versus have a relationship with you. And so we got to start being real honest about this. I don't take the stance of, be scared that gay people are going to come at you. I truly believe that when you have the heart of God on the inside of you, it doesn't allow you to go at people from a hateful place. And again, I truly don't know if what she said in the video, because I sort of avoid, drama on social media. I don't know if it was hateful. I've seen people's responses that, well, one, she was talking about all gay people. No, she was talking about the gay people in her church. No, she was talking about this. So there's a lot of he said, she said. And what happens in a pulpit versus what happens in a career, that's a dichotomy that most people never have to understand. When you operate as a pastor or some kind of ministry leader, and then you have to work in a secular world, which most Christians do, there's always this sort of two lifestyles you have to, just like for black men and black people having the code switch. You speak one language at work and you speak one language at home. So I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon of bashing Kim Burrell. I've always had the stance that gay people aren't some alien race of different people. They're just human beings that have different choices. I don't hate them. I love them. Even if I disagree with you on certain things, there's never any reason for me to, be afraid of you. I'm going to catch gay because you're near me. There people do think like that. I've never been one of them. Gay people in my family, gay people all around me in this city. I've had deep conversations with gay people, and at the end of it, versus feeling bashed when they have biblical conversations with me, they say, well, where do you go to church? And I think that's the approach more people have to have, never condoning what you may consider sin, but loving them to a place where if they choose to let God into that area of their life, they have that choice. And that's where I'll end it.
Final commentary on this one goes to Brandon.
Yeah, I found the article to be quite interesting from just a journalistic standpoint. I feel like they kind of used Kim Burrell as kind of clickbait. They didn't really talk too much about what she said in the article. And also the title was interesting. It said Kim Burrell and the complex relationship between Black women and gay men. And it really was discussing Black women and Black gay men, but they didn't emphasize that. And I find that to be quite interesting. Another angle to this article was kind of a side swipe at patriarchy and hyper masculinity. And I feel like this kind of Black women versus gay men thing is putting two groups of Black people kind of against each other to squabble and fight instead of focusing on what we need to collectively. I think that's very dangerous when that starts to happen. And this is why with the work that I do, I always champion kind of a Black first political ideology, no matter what someone's sexual orientation is. Because when we don't do that and we just identify ourselves as gay or just identify ourselves as women or men, we often get into these squabbles and then we don't move forward collectively because we're fighting about all these other labels and boxes that we put ourselves in instead of focusing on our collective kind of responsibility to each other. With that said, Kim Burrell, I didn't hear everything she said. I just caught a couple of different articles and headlines. But she has to be aware and be a lot smarter when she's making, decisions to say certain things like this. And I think a lot of people didn't even know who Kim Burrell was. And, her making these statements has kind of put her on a national spotlight. And her career is kind of taking a hit because of that. And she has to, if she does have these views, I think she has the right to say whatever she wants to, but she has to do it in a smart way. Because I don't think that this is what she expected going into 2017. And me personally, when it comes to LGBTQ matters, it's very hard to talk about it because I hear a lot of, the Black community is homophobic, but then I also see a lot of acceptance for homosexual people within the Black community. So it's complex. It's a complex issue that I think needs to be dealt with. But at the same time, I don't think that the Black community is any more homophobic than any other community. And as a group, like Mr. Kellum was saying, the LGBTQ community is moving forward politically, and I think Black people need to take note and understand that they're moving forward with their agendas, and we must do the same as a people, no matter what our sexual orientation is.
Okay, gentlemen, good stuff. Next conversation piece. Study explores how race impacts homelessness, and we haven't had a conversation piece for a while on homelessness in America, so I thought it'd be good to bring it to the table, especially at the beginning of a new year and a beginning of a new presidency. So first up on this one, Dr. Alfonso Porter.
Yeah, hey, okay. Well, in looking at it, I think the article mentioned some of the disparities that Black men have to contend with, which then lends itself to the numbers that we're seeing regarding homelessness. I believe that it lamented to the fact that we have 12 or 13% of the population, but we're 40% of those who are homeless. I think there's some harsh realities here that we must contend with, and that is, you didn't just wake up today and realize that you were Black. And given that, you didn't just now realize that it's going to be harder to contend with, and it's harder to live. And so, depending on what model you're looking at, you have to understand, certainly as a Black man, that you're going to run into not only obstacles, but impediments. And not only that, but just a flat out hatred and a desire for you not to achieve. Now, once you realize that, then you behave accordingly. Now, and I would also say that the article then tended to trend towards the fact of that incarceration will then lead to homelessness, in as much as now you can't get a job, or you cannot access the full liberties that the Constitution uh, promises. And that's one of the things. I mean, what we have to do is to make sure that our young men, before they become involved in the criminal justice system, and that's one of the things as an educator that I've spent quite a bit of time in trying to move. And I think all the gentlemen on this panel, we our lives are so dedicated to the goal of moving the mindset of our young men away from all of this, all of the things that heretofore have been the problem. And so the whole incarceration piece can be mitigated if, in fact, we are successful in our objectives. Those of us who are on this panel tonight, if we're successful in our objectives in moving the mindset of our young men, then we can effectively not only address the homelessness, but unemployment and fatherhood and feeling like a man and all these other things that we typically talk about on the platform. So, I think this is something that can be addressed, but but it's going to take, for those of us who are on this program and those who are listening, to realize that, first of all, it's harder to be a black man, but at the same time, when you realize that, you then start to comport your life in a way that would yield different results in the end.
Next up, Rodney.
So I always say this for several different topics, is that nothing happens in mass by accident. When you see black men, black men making up 50% of the population in prison, when you see black people representing a very large portion of homeless people in this country, when you see black people dying from diseases at a higher rate and a faster rate from any other group in this country, it's not an accident. These are things that are now symptoms from a design of separation. When the Emancipation Proclamation happened and slaves were automatically freed, automatically laws were created now called the Jim Crow laws to keep black people in a subservient place, in a place below the lower class white people. When black people began getting jobs and careers and wanted to become homeowners and returning from World War I and World War II, wanted to become homeowners, redlining was created to keep black people out of certain neighborhoods, owning real estate in general, and especially moving into certain neighborhoods. That practice still persists in different ways in different parts of the country. When the war on drugs was created, it specifically targeted black and brown people, resulting in our now 50% incarceration rate for the rates around this country. You go from there. You keep on adding. You changed and genetically modified food that really targets poor areas, specifically African American communities, where you feed them such high levels of processed sugars, carbs, and things that lead to higher rates of heart disease and cancers. And then we don't have access to the health care that, if we find certain things that early enough, we can cure them, like prostate cancers and colon cancers. And yet we die at a higher rate of those things too. Women being the highest rate of heart disease deaths in the world, I believe it's the world, black women specifically. These things are not by accident. There's never been a mass anything that happens by accident. Even animals that migrate have it ingrained in the DNA. They don't do that by accident. And so when you see, black folks representing such a large number of homeless people in this country, you can just sort of pull all those things I talked about and just see this homelessness as just one symptom of a bigger picture. And so those are all the stats I can bring out of my head. Those are all the points I can make. My church, we spend time ministering and feeding homeless people. There's a major homeless shelter on a place called Peachtree and Pine in downtown Atlanta. It's a big political point here in Atlanta. The mayor and the next mayor is going to have to deal with it. That people are arguing and debating over how to treat the homeless community. And it really, if you ever spend any time, you realize they're just human beings. Some of them are there by choice. Some of them are there by circumstances and situation. And any person can either be they're one step away from being that homeless person and one step away from being the wealthy guy. It can be anybody. So they're just people. But there's so many things that sort of funnel people of color into the most negative parts of our society, homelessness being one of them. And this is just something that if people would unharden their hearts to and stop just discarding them as homeless people and just seeing them as people that really need a chance, need a hand, just need something, some hope and opportunity, and not just somebody that's just discarded, I think we can really start to put a dent in these statistics. And, at this point, you have to start looking within the community to say, okay, what are we going to do for ourselves instead of looking outside?
All right. Brandon, your turn.
Yeah, this article was, definitely had tons of harsh truths within it. And homelessness is a huge thing that I think doesn't get enough attention, especially for us, for Black folks, when we do have such a large number of people homeless that are chronically homeless. One thing that I like to point out to a lot of people is there's a lot of Black folks that are homeless and don't know they're homeless because we live with our family members or, we live with friends and we bounce house to house and do a lot of couch hopping. I know that happens a lot here in the Twin Cities where we have one of the bigger youth homelessness problems in the United States. And a lot of those young people are African American. One of the things that came to mind to me when I was reading this article is we will be hosting a Super Bowl next year. And we just built this great, beautiful stadium for the Minnesota Vikings, right where the homeless people usually stay downtown Minneapolis. And I'm very concerned to figure out what's going to happen to this huge homelessness population for that week of the Super Bowl next year. It is very cold here in Minnesota. We don't have a lot of resources for the homeless. A lot of the nonprofits that focus on the homelessness don't get as much funding as they should. And I feel like those people end up just getting swept away, kind of like what happened a couple years ago when they had the Super Bowl in San Francisco. But we have to be very mindful and pay close attention to this symptom of homelessness because, like Mr. Keller said, once again, this is just a symptom to a bigger problem. Like we live in a systematic racism and white supremacist society that has created these conditions. And when we move from the industrial revolution and we lost all those jobs and jobs overseas, there were a lot of displaced men that did not have ways to make a living and end up homeless. So this has been a struggle that's been going on for a long time, and we're really starting to see our younger people being hit by it, where we got 14, 15, and 16-year-old Black children on the streets not knowing where they're going to go. So this is very dangerous. The article highlighted a couple of different stats comparing Blacks and white homelessness populations, but that I found very interesting as well. It said that Black people have a higher rate of drug use, but lower rates of alcohol abuse and mental illness diagnoses compared to white people. And how I interpreted that stat from the article was, in order to be a white person to be homeless, you have to be, a serious drug abuser, or a serious alcoholic, or have a serious mental health illness, a diagnosis in order for you to be homeless. Where you can be a Black person who may or may not have a drug problem, but end up homeless due to financial reasons. So even the reasoning for the homelessness is something that we need to pay attention to. There are a lot of homeless people, and of that 40, I think it's 44%, something like that, in the 40s% of homeless Black people, most of those are men. And I think that is something that we definitely need to pay attention to as Black males. So that's my point on the article.
All right. And finally on this one, Dr. Ryer.
All the men said some very interesting things. The article is very interesting, but, I kind of disagree with a lot of what the article said. Again, I believe that things are designed for African Americans. One thing, incarceration. When I work with men who are incarcerated, the first thing I do is try to develop a plan for them that they will have housing and that they will be able to connect themselves to family support and all those different things that will prohibit them from coming back to prison. They spoke about that. Youth service. A lot of I noticed young brothers are homeless, and that's because of the dynamics that are happening in society with our youth. And this is why our mentor program is very important to more or less to combat that issue. It's more whites on welfare than African Americans. That's a fact. These samplings was very small samplings, and they go into Black neighborhoods to more or less try to get these numbers. But if you look at the country as a whole, and you dig deep into the South and these little towns, you find out that 90% of some towns in the South, deep down in the South, are on public assistance. But then it seemed like they target African Americans, and it's not more African Americans on drugs than white folks. That's incorrect. That's incorrect. And like again, where they get these numbers from, I don't really know. But what I do know is that the system is designed for African Americans to fail, especially men coming out of prison. What they do is that when they ask you, okay, you're being released, they say, okay, well, where are you going to live? And they say, well, I'm going to my parents' home. They say, no, you can't go there because you was arrested in that community. And so what they do is send them to a shelter. Now, this shelter is worse than being in prison. And you can't leave anything down. Once you leave your wallet down, you turn around, you are in a space with something like 190 people, somebody steal your wallet. Now there's a situation, and then you find yourself back in prison. So I think that, these statistics is false, and I believe that the system is designed to fail African Americans. And those who can navigate through the system is those who decide to want things better for themselves. And so the article, I disagree with in the article in its totality, but my focus is to work with men to help men become better fathers, to work with the youth to get them to become better leaders because they are our future, and to work with the young women because you have young women going to prison too. They homeless too. They're getting a lot of time in prison too, and we need to begin to start working with our young ladies too, our daughters that 16, 17, 18, holding them guys drugs out there in the street, holding them guys guns out there in the street, and begin to start working with them too, and trying to design some programs for them. Now, in closing, what I want to say is that they already attacked the parenthood program off the top already. And so women have an issue now with Planned Parenthood. They can't get certain type of pap smears and certain type of STD treatments and a lot of different types of things that is happening, that they trying to push right now. But then you have a guy named Paul Ryan that in Wisconsin, they have the worst system in the world. And he's trying to push this on other people. So the first thing they want to do is to kill Obamacare. Because it's something that a black man did, and something, preconceived conditions, people like that. That you have a condition and you can still get some medical attention, and they don't even have an answer to that. And so all I want to say is that things are designed, in America for African Americans to fail, and when we begin to excel past these boundaries, and they begin to look at us, and they begin to label us, and call us all these different types of names. How they call the first lady names, when she was she's the icon in the White House. She's a woman. She's a mother. And she's all that they have never seen in the White House, and they're able to call her name. So I think there's a lot of disparities in America, even when we do good. They talk about us. So just continue to do good. They're gonna always talk about you.
Okay. Next conversation piece. 12 things you don't need to be an incredible black man. So I have 4 black men on the panel, and I want to know what they think about this article. So first up, Rodney Kellum.
Great list. And, I've done some talking and chatting and conversing and debating about, things that particularly make someone masculine or not. And I think this is actually a pretty decent list because what they've done is they've attacked really a lot of the stereotypes. And so, the clear skin one I never knew was an issue. I didn't really see that an issue, but big muscles, your skin tone, big penis, degrees. These are street cred. These are things that in a hyper masculine. I think Brother Jones had talked about that. In a hyper masculine, at least from the view that people think we should be, whether it's ourselves, the previous generations before us, what they put on to us, what women have been raised to think what a man is. These are some stereotypes that persist, and they are very, a lot of times unhealthy. And it makes people go after things that aren't natural to them. For instance, the big muscle thing. I was an athlete all the way through college. I played basketball all the way through college. I never really could gain a lot of weight until, after my college career when I stopped playing basketball. I couldn't put on pounds. I think I started college at 215. I finished somewhere around 235. The next year, I ballooned up to 315 pounds. So that wasn't muscle. That was fat, by the way. Some body types were not all the same. Some people have fast twitch muscle instead of bulky muscle. And so these stereotypes can be very damaging to people's relationships when they become adults, because they go out, especially women, will go out looking for things that are unrealistic, especially depending on what a young girl's relationship is with her father. If she had one or not, she will essentially go out looking for her father subconsciously. So if she was raised by a man or wasn't raised by a man that wasn't there, she will strangely be attracted to somebody who's not going to be there for them. If she was raised by a man who was loving and caring, 9 times out of 10, she's going to find somebody who is loving and caring and be subconsciously attracted to that. She's raised by somebody abusive, guess what's going to happen? She may be attracted to somebody abusive. So I like this. I really like this because I think attacking stereotypes about masculinity, especially black masculinity, is very positive. We need to be more accepting of people that don't fit the traditional mold of black man, because realistically, this form wasn't created by us. A lot of these ideas of black masculinity in this country were very much shaped by the false science of eugenics and the mechanics of white supremacist racism during slavery. This is where a lot of these things come from. The big penis, the big muscles. That was, the buck farms and the buck breaking and all these horrible things. These sex farms. They wanted to for black men to look a certain way to get more money for them. Well, he can work hard. Look at these big muscles. And so I love breaking the back of stereotypes. So I liked it. I'll end it like that.
Next up, Brandon.
Yes, I had a few chuckles reading this article. The clear skin one kind of got me too. I was like, okay, where are we going with this one? But I think that's something that we often don't think about as men consciously, is how we take care of our skin and how we take care of our bodies and being clean. Since I work with a lot of younger black males, the appearance is a huge thing. We do care about our appearance, but I don't think we think about our health care when it comes to skincare, things like that too often. So I like that was kind of teased out, but it did kind of catch me off guard. The journalist here, the writer, highlighted a lot of the stereotypes that black males have faced, and just like the last speaker had said, these are stereotypes that were placed upon us that we necessarily did not have ourselves, but we eventually have internalized and made part of quote unquote black culture, and how we've been extremely sexualized as black men, and we've been kind of targeted and molded to be these hyper masculine beings, which can be a dangerous narrative for black males to have, because if you don't fit that hyper masculine stereotype, the 6'4", 230-pound muscle bound guy, then you're looking at yourself like, well, who am I supposed to be? And then on the counterpoint, when you have, female suitors and they're looking for the same thing, and then they realize that's only a small portion of the black male population. And then a lot of frustration comes aboard because they're not getting the stereotypical male that they expect to get, because that guy just does not exist as much as we would like to believe. Which brings me to my next point as far as our reputation. I believe that as black males, it's very vital for us moving forward to start crafting our own narrative on who we are as men. We need to craft our narrative, we need to project our narrative, and we need to promote our narrative as black men. And what I say, that narrative of masculinity or manhood needs to be something constructive. And I think that we are very intelligent. I think we all have a level of genius that we can put forward. And I think that black manhood and masculinity does not have to have a certain look, but it should definitely have a certain type of action and expectation. And that's my point from that article.
No problem. Well done. Dr. Ryer.
Yes. That article I thought was very interesting, very stereotypes of the skin, the penis, even going as far as the thug down and the muscles and all that, that's how people designed us. That's how they want us to be. We were marketable as slaves, and that's what they wanted. But I think that, be a great person, a great man, a great dad, a great listener, a great communicator. I think those are very important things that I think that black men need to worry about. Be kind and be loving. Be tender. Be helpful. I think those are things that are very important to me that I talk to men about, because these are expressions of who you are. These stereotypical things that people say, that's not who we are. Who you are is how you express yourself and what you say, what you speak into the universe. That's who you are. And so, to be a great person, to be a great dad, a great human being, communicate, these are things that's very essential towards the growth and development of who a man is and who he's becoming. And that's my take on that.
Excellent. Well done. Well done. And Dr. Porter.
Okay, sorry about that. I had you on mute.
Okay.
But I wanted to say to the gentleman that those were excellent points. I think you've encapsulated this issue well. And of course, these are unhealthy stereotypes, I think, as Rodney put it. And, I can't understand the surprise. Why is it brand new? When has there ever been a point in which we've been treated in this country with the level of respect and dignity that we deserve? So it's not a brand new thing that we're disrespected now. But I want to point out there's an angle to this. Those are the things that you don't need, but we play to it. Okay? We play to the big penis thing. We play to the hypermasculine thing. We play to the super athlete thing. We play to the hip hop artist thing. We play to that, and in ourselves, we want to aspire to it. So, I was watching this movie, Barbershop, this thing, and I was looking at the gentleman who produced it, I think Ice Cube. Now, this man, in my estimation, you're in a group as a young man, as in a group called Niggas with Attitude. Now that's back in the day, but now today he's grown to the point to where he's now saying, well, we got to be careful because words have power. And see, that's quite a departure from the young man that he was then and the middle-aged man that he is now. We make these transcendencies through life because I saw a bunch of hypocrisy in who he was and now who he is. And we all live this. It's that thing called life. We have to grow into who we must be. But the thing is, we can start instilling that from day one. And that's what these brothers on here, the fatherpreneur and the gentleman, there in New York, are saying about our ascendancy in our own psychology about being who we are authentically as men.
Okay, gentlemen, coming up to our final conversation piece. And we're recording this live on January 15, 2017. On January 20th, 2017, there will be a change of significance in America that will affect the whole world. Barack Obama will no longer be president after 8 years in office. So, two-part ending conversation piece here. If any of the gentlemen had the opportunity to see his farewell address, if they have any comments, and then what is their farewell address to Barack Obama and Michelle Obama and their two lovely girls. So finishing off, first up, Brandon.
All right. So I thought that President Obama's speech was, typical President Obama speech. He's a great speaker. He hit, a lot of the points that people wanted him to hit. The part that I found to be interesting was around the 17-minute mark when he started to talk about race relations and how race relations have gotten better. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that they've gotten more refined. Individually, maybe they've gotten a little better for some people, but not for us entirely. So for about, 10 minutes or so, President Obama was directly addressing Black people. And one of the things he said that we are not where we need to be, and all of us have to work hard to get there. And I agree with that statement. But at the same time, I feel like he wasn't really talking about what happened. And I understand things about, benign neglect and not necessarily addressing African American people or black people directly when you're being political. But I feel like he kind of skated around a lot of things and put a lot of the responsibility back on black folks to understand the plight of white people. And he specifically said middle class white people understand what they're going through in order for us to get better. And I feel like that's very hard to say when we make so many attempts to do that, and we don't always get that reciprocated back towards us. Another thing I found interesting from this speech, he used the term social attitudes, and I was like, that was an interesting term. I've never heard that before. And I think that a lot of this is more and bigger than a social attitude. I think this is just the culture that we live in. And I know I don't expect President Obama to necessarily say that, but as black people, we need to understand this is the culture that we live in. This isn't just changing people's attitudes. We're talking about shifting the entire culture that is very anti-black. It's not set up for us to be successful. It's set up for us to be workers and stay in a kind of sub-class or sub-system within, this United States and white supremacy. So, President Obama, he's on his way out. He did what he could. A lot of folks give him a lot of flack. I know mainline LaRon, who's often on the show, he's definitely not a fan of President Obama. I was really hoping he was going to be on the call tonight because I wanted to know what he had to say about this. So I'm not going to attack him like I know my man mainline LaRon would do. But President Obama, he did not directly do a lot for black folks. And I think we had our hopes set really high for him to do something that he wasn't able to do. And we didn't necessarily ask him to do anything directly either. And this is just another sign for us to get politically organized so we can move forward and not be so emotional and use a lot more logic. So I hope that we're paying attention. Things are going to change. Policies are going to change, and we have to get focused. So thank you, President Obama, for being a great person, an upfront person, a symbol for black folks, but it's time for us to get organized and move forward. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, next up, Dr. Ryer.
I kind of like what Brandon said, and he kind of took my words. But I focus on understanding the middle class and what they're going through, when I think that African Americans have been going through so much, these many years and centuries we've been in America, and they still don't understand us. I love President Obama because of his. He's a great dad. He's a great human being. He's a great husband. He's honest. He's caring, integrity. He fought with Congress all the way through. I mean, he could have went more into depth in his speech, but he decided not to. He know we have some very tough times. He didn't want to say that. He know that that President-elect said that he's going to focus on those states that was blue, that turned red. But my point is that the states that turned red did not elect him. Who elected him was electoral votes. That's who elected him, is electoral votes. And so there's a lot of different things that, I think that he could have been more honest about. One thing about politics I realize is that in politics, people aren't honest in politics. And when you're in politics, you're just not going to be honest, because I think it was some things that should have been said, that he didn't say. And I hear how people talk about the president-elect and certain things, and how he have these individuals who is trying to more or less support him. And I'm saying, these people must be brainwashed. But overall, President Obama I think he was a great president. I think he did what he had to do. He didn't change anything in regards to black folk, but he did leave a mark. He did develop a health care, and he loved his family. He's a family man, which you have never seen that in the White House. And one thing else is that there was no scandals in 8 years. Praise God.
Okay.
And that's my.
Next up, Dr. Porter.
Yeah. Hey, Listen, I wrote a letter to President Obama thanking him for his service. I'd like to read that letter, but I don't think we've got time. It's about 500 words or so. But I'll start reading the letter and then just kind of let you know, and this sums up how I feel. It's hard to believe that after 8 years, that 8 years has passed since we stood in the shadow of the Capitol to bear witness to your historical swearing in as our nation's 44th president. As we begin to celebrate the close of your time in the White House, we reflect with an overwhelming sense of pride, gratitude, indebtedness, and thankfulness. Since the very first days of your administration, you have worked what can only be considered virtual miracles in restoring the nation's economic health in the face of the Great Recession. This, despite what seemed to be insurmountable odds obstructing your efforts at every turn. Mr. President, you represented our country with tremendous distinction, integrity, decency, strength, and ability, all while being constantly maligned, attacked, and insulted personally by your constant detractors. Indeed, your family's mantra, when they go low, we go high, has become a rallying cry as we continue to make our nation the more perfect union of which you speak on many occasions. I simply want you to know how much I honor and lift you up. We collectively swell with pride watching you dedicate both the Martin Luther King Memorial and the African American Museum of History and Culture. For me, it represented the culmination of centuries of hope, sacrifice, pain, struggle, and dedication. For African Americans, mere words do not express what we ought to feel in appreciation for your service. Mr. President, you have single-handedly elevated the images and reflections of African Americans to new heights all over this world. So what did you do? You passed the Affordable Care Act after more than a century of effort by past administrations. You reduced the unemployment rate by half. You rescued the auto industry. You fixed our problems with Cuba after all this time. You got a nuclear arms deal all by yourself. You brought the troops home from war. You guided our ascendancy as an energy superpower, resulting in the decrease of 50% of the price of gas at the pump. The Dow has tripled in value. And what else can we say? It's been an incredible journey, one that is only now beginning to take effect in the hearts and minds of those who you left behind.
Thank you for reading that. Much appreciated and not taken for granted. And last commentary and farewell on this panel to Barack Obama goes to Rodney Kellum.
So I've said in the past, and I maintain my position of I'm not someone who is a party supporter. I'm not a Democrat nor a Republican. And my sentiments on Barack Obama aren't political sentiments or statements. It's always been that I am so thankful to have an image as a president, the highest elected office in our country, to be a black man for the entire life of my son, who's now 8 years old. And that him and my daughter and my son, my youngest son, who's 3 months old, we can always say that the first president in her lifetime was a black man. The first president in my lifetime and everyone else's lifetime in this country has always been a white man. So it was great to see the image of a black family, a black man in that position, because images are so very important. It's very hard to find in mass or even a few very positive images of blackness in our culture, on our screens, on our news, on our movies, in our music. So I thank him for being a positive image. I thank Michelle Obama for being a positive image. I honestly skipped watching the farewell address when I started seeing all the commentary about, oh, he's making me cry. He's talking about Michelle. So, when it comes to family, that's my little soft spot. So I avoided that. But I just appreciate how he loved his black woman. He loved her intentionally. He loved her publicly. He loved her without holding back. He sang to her in public. And those things are images, powerful images to little black boys and little black girls and grown black women and grown black men to show what's possible to be a masculine person and show love in that way is so very important. So I've never talked about his legacy and political views, and from a political standpoint, it's always from the image and the positive image that he's portrayed and what it means to Black Americans, to Black people around this globe, to one that's what's possible, something to strive for, taking the limits off of our thinking. It's great to have images like him and his family, and we need so many more. So that's my farewell to him, saying thank you for being a positive image. Nothing political, and that's about it.
All right, gentlemen.
That's what's up.
Thank you so much for being there, and I have to thank all the panelists for taking time out of their positive, productive schedules to make it another epic conversation on Do You Know What Time It Is, which is heard most Sunday evenings, 9 p.m. Eastern Time at the Dr. Vibe Show. Before we let our panelists go, we invite them to give their contact information, so if anyone would like to touch base with them, they can. So first up, first time on, Brandon Jones.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be on with all you gentlemen. Folks can reach me at wokepodcast.com. That's WOKE podcast.com. I am at The Woke Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Feel free to friend me, follow me, connect with me in any way you would like. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Next up, Dr. Thomas Ryer.
Yes. I can be reached at 631-509-1435. Website is www.transitionallifecoach.org. I can also be reached at 347-366-7238. And I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and all those great media things. I can be reached.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ryer. Next up, Alfonso Porter.
All right. Well, hey, listen, gentlemen, thanks so much. It's been an honor being on the show with you tonight, and thank you again, Dr. Vibe. I'm Dr. Alfonso Porter from Denver, and you can reach me on our email at aporter@vertexlearning.com, and as well on Twitter at Vertex Press LLC. Thanks, Dr. Vibe.
My pleasure. And finally, from the bullpen, we have Rodney Kellum.
So I'd like to end the same way that I began, by saying thank you to Dr. Vibe for providing an outlet for Black men to talk about things that matter to us and those that love us. If you'd like to get in contact with me, and I suggest you do so, you can find me on social media at Fatherpreneur, Father, Preneur. You can check out two of my websites, fatherpreneurship.com, where I encourage men and women to become more present and engaged parents by using entrepreneurship as a vehicle, and also speaklife.online, where, if you need an inspirational speaker to show you how to use words to frame the life that you want to reach out to me and book me ASAP.
Excellent. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thanks to everyone who listened to this live or will be listening to it on the replay. I am Dr. Vibe, host and producer of Do You Know What Time It Is? Again, most Sunday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. You can contact me probably the best three ways. Twitter at DRVIBESHOW. Email dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. And as always, the website address, www.thedrvibeshow.com. And you can catch replays of my conversations, my epic conversations, all over the place, from Good Men Project to WJMS Radio to Google Play to iHeartRadio. There's Stitcher. There's iTunes. I think I may have left one or two out, but you know what? Who cares? You'll find it.
That's right. Who cares? Man, Dr. Vibe is super cool, man. Man, it was great to be on the Dr. Vibe show. I know the audio quality was a little different. We were on cell phones calling in, but you were able to still get some of that good information, some thought-provoking information, some things to stimulate your mind. Man, listen, this is the Woke Podcast. As always, be sure to share the podcast with someone that you care about. Be safe, be constructive, be woke, and be sure to come back. Peace.